City Council meeting into order at 6:07 PM. May we have a roll call, please?
Johnson.
Here.
Kelly.
Here.
Mikulski.
Here.
Polika. Here. Leaks May.
Here. So first, thank you all for showing up and joining us regarding our discussion tonight regarding the Headlee, what we'd like to see as far as a new proposal and what kind of went wrong. I'm going to give those an opportunity to come up to the podium during the time of our regular agenda, which will be strictly to discuss the November millage proposal and what you'd like to see moving forward. We are moving into the section of the agenda where it's called audience, and I'm going to ask that if you have something to say regarding item 4A, the millage proposal, then I'm going to ask that you state it. We open up for call to audience after those discussions and those questions. You can come up to the podium to speak about what you'd like to speak about for 3 minutes. But then I'm trying for the sake of time, and I want all of you to have an opportunity to speak. So I just want you to not repeat what we're already hearing. So if you have something that you want to speak on, you can come up to the podium now, or we will go right into the discussion regarding the millage. You come up to the podium. And we're going for 3 minutes.
Evelyn Elster, Wild Wild West Drayton. Because it was brought to our attention at the last council meeting that you weren't sure why it didn't pass, here's a partial explanation. Regarding a modified override proposal, the newbies the city has welcomed with open arms after pushing out so many long-term homeowners has proven to be less gullible than the city had hoped for. I am thankful your plan to deceive newer residents has failed. The oligarchy, cliques, sycophants, and self-promoters in Ferndale have failed us. The use of boards, task force, and commissions for personal gain has failed us. Stacking the deck on these boards, task forces, and commissions has failed us. Toxic positivity and the coddling of special interest groups has failed us and cheated us of a reasonable and rational government. Your cliques, social media bullies have failed us, and the practice of ostracizing those who question your agenda has failed us. Your spending addiction has failed us. This public can't afford most of the high-end expenditures this city has engaged in. The obsession with entertainment, aesthetics, and amusement has failed us. The excessive use of outside consultants, facilitators, and surveys have failed us in their intended deception to further the agenda of this government. Sweetheart and secret squirrel deals with vendors have failed us. Our city has failed us, and the trust is broken. Time to do a 180 and stop the bleeding. A new city manager is an excellent start. Scale way back on your pipe dreams. Function over aesthetics. We do not need a $40 million Jetsons cartoon for police and fire headquarters, but a workable fortress. We cannot afford to employ the world. The city manager does not require an army to do their job for them, especially in a city this size. Discourage employees using Ferndale as a stepping stone in their careers. Prioritize essential public safety and DPW services. These are what we pay for as taxpayers first and foremost. If you must cut any department, make it any other than these essential services. The expanded DDA should be self-sufficient by now with the additional TIF funds. They shouldn't need anything from the general fund anymore. Parks and Rec has been robbing the city coffers and has been for some time now. They are non-essential. Stop forcing us to pay for concrete parks and the subsequent maintenance of each addition. Ferndale is not a circus.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Mary Fredericks. I live on University here in Ferndale, naturally. I'm going to make this short and sweet. I understand that this was called as a town hall meeting. If that is so, why are we following an agenda, and why are we only going to 3 minutes per speaker? So I'm being short and sweet here. What is the deal? This is a town hall meeting. Then it should be a little bit different than following an actual agenda for everything that we're discussing today, when we know that it's regarding the Headlee Amendment.
Before you get started, let me make a comment regarding that. Because this has to be a public meeting.
Sorry?
Because this has to be a public meeting, we had to put it on the agenda, and we're following the agenda format. As far as the 3 minutes, I want to make sure everyone here has a chance to speak. Doesn't mean that the conversation ends at the time, but I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak, and there's a lot of people here.
Since when is a public meeting has to be put on the agenda? When has that ever taken place? Greg, you can answer that.
Yeah, every public meeting there has to be an agenda. That's the law. It's the Open Meetings Act.
I understand this, but she said put on the agenda. Put on what agenda?
This agenda.
Oh, so this is what you're,
That's the
Yes.
agenda.
so, but a town hall meeting can be held over here in Como's. Would it have to be put on the agenda? Would it have to be? any
Well,
of the-
if it wasn't led by city council, it could be a town hall in that format. But because we have council here, it has to be set in a meeting format according to the Michigan government.
Yeah, where is our attorney today? That he would have been nice if he was
Well, we already cleared it with our attorney to have this meeting. That's the
here.
point.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Hi, David, and I live on Withington Street. Just the pointers regards to the millage and such. I'd like us to give up on the idea of getting a community center. It's all a good idea in a sense, but I find them to be money pits, and for our size of a city, I think it's not affordable. Also, it's a little bit out there, but I wouldn't mind seeing one fire station on the other side near Hill. Maybe if we could contract with Hazel Park for their fire services. And basically that's where, and some way to, when we do a combined police fire station to keep the costs minimal. I know we have protocol, but just to keep it at our minimum. Thanks.
Hi, I've never spoken at a city hall thing. Do I have to say my name, where I live? Cool. Rachel Frank, I live on Jean Street. I won't have a lot of alliteration, but I also promise no name calling or anything funky. For why this probably failed, I think even if it was the perfect proposal, I think we're in a time of increased anger, economic concern, sometimes valid, sometimes not, internationally, nationally, statewide, obviously locally. So for those that worked hard for this proposal and believed in it, I think it was an uphill battle, unfortunately. If you didn't believe in it, you probably aren't feeling heard, and maybe we can adjust that. So maybe that's something moving forward beyond the proposal, but that might be ways that people can be heard. I usually haven't come to city council because I have worked in after school programming, which means I work till 8 o'clock at night. So I'm just not able to, and I'm sure lots of working parents and stuff also have a tough time. Doesn't mean that we cancel whatever, but maybe there can be adjustments. So maybe it's more of, yes, there's a focus on a proposal, but there's obviously unmet needs and unheard things that maybe that can be the focus. And moving forward, I do wonder if there's a way to combine city services or talk to other cities. Like, I love Parks and Rec. I'm in after school programming. I ran the Boys and Girls Club at the Coolett Community Center. I'm not speaking on behalf of any organization. We had 60 to 80 kids a day, a waiting list of 50, 200 on our roster, and the waiting list only hit 50 because I had to stop it because people were on it for years. So there's a huge need for youth services. I also was privy and overheard conversations when a community center was talked about. There are conversations, it must have been close to a decade now, of, hey, those aren't our kids. So I also think in our conversations, we probably have some racism, classism stuff that as a city, right, we could need to continue to come to terms with, because I think that was a bit of the stalling conversation, right, that as I'm serving the youth of our community, I'm hearing that they're not youth in our community. So whatever moving forward, I know the community center is a tough thing given the space. So for my voting, that was a tough. I voted where I voted, I don't want to say because I feel like it's an angry crowd, but I had a question of like, is that the best use of space or best use of a community center? In the same way, I'm like, because there couldn't be 80 to 100 to 200 kids. So in what ways could we partner with other cities for services that other cities might be in the same boat? So that's what I would think moving forward, if that's possible. But I don't work in the city and I don't work in accounting. Just speaking as an individual with one experience, thanks for all you do. And thanks everybody for having an opinion, and hopefully we can be cool about it.
Good evening. My name is Chris Klemecki, and I live on Meadowdale Street. And I've lived in Ferndale here for 39 years, and I have never voted no on a millage, a city millage, a school millage. I have always supported my city. It pained me this time to have to really look at my finances and say, I can't do this. I can't do it anymore. So I understand the need for fire and police facilities. That's not a new issue in this city. That issue's been around for a long time. Long before the dot, long before landscapes and fancy schmancies, whatever we have, which is fun when you can afford it. But now we need police and fire facilities, and that's a mandate that has to happen. Give us a proposal for what we need, not what we want, and I think you may have success in getting it passed.
Hi again. My name is Michelle Donaldson. I live at 640 La Prairie Street. I appreciate you guys being here tonight. I appreciate everybody showing up. It's nice to see a packed house. Okay. I kind of have some bigger thinking here. And I understand that we need to solve this problem and we need to do it quickly because there are timelines and essential things that we need to attend to. But the other side of that, I think there's a huge chance here for major advocacy in Lansing, and I know you said that there's some work being done on the things that hold us back. That's Proposition A, right? Something along those lines, yeah. I'm curious what work is being done with other municipalities to help lobby in Lansing so that we can get our tax money into our communities. It seems like Ferndale would be kind of the perfect case study considering we have some of the highest taxes in the state, and we're talking about not being able to fund our police and fire. So that to me is...
Did something happen with the microphone?
I think so. Can you, is it me?
Okay, I think it sounds okay.
Okay. I think that should be a very large part of the discussion because even though we hopefully figure this out, we have to figure this out, it still doesn't take care of the component that's holding us back long term. So I would really like to see some sort of momentum there because that's just really, really important. The other thing I would say, I was here Wednesday and we were talking about the timeline of when we can take this vote. And there are three options. One of them costs $35,000. The other two don't. And immediately, Councilman Johnson moved to go with the $35,000 option. So I think that kind of plays with the optics that we tend to go with things that maybe aren't the most fiscally sound. And it obviously, the special election, because of the timeline, is ideal, but I think we have to look at it and say, we don't have that luxury to even consider the special election because we don't have $35,000 to put towards it. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents right now. Thanks.
Good evening, Christina Mosine, 748 Wordsworth Street. I would just like to say I was a no vote this time. I've always voted yes. I think city services are essentially important. I love our parks. My children and I are at them pretty much daily. However, I don't feel these three should have been bundled together. They should have been two separate issues. That's my first point. Second point, I've even heard it here tonight. People don't know the difference between this as a community center or as a recreation center. They're two totally different things. And we were going for a rec center, not a community center, and it's very confusing still. Even when we were going to the Parks and Recreation meetings with the Smiths groups, taking all the information, even the Parks and Recreation director said community center a handful of times in one of the many meetings that I attended. It's confusing. Unfortunately, we are not Oak Park or Royal Oak. We don't have 60 to 100,000 people in our area. We're a tight-knit community of people who have strong feelings about our community. However, we don't have that amount of population to have a huge community center or rec center or the affordability of that tax bracket to be able to afford these things. We want things a huge city wants, and we just don't have. And I think no matter how much money we put towards the Parks and Recreation Department, it's going to be a small department. We can't even find room in our actual city offices right now. They're in Incubizo paying way too much for having that office space that we can't use for anything else. So I think that's kind of wasteful spending, but we just don't have a place even for them right now. We can't put them in the recreation center because of different grants, and because of that, that's why I voted no. It couldn't be served for what we needed it for. So someday we may find the money. Unfortunately, we don't have it, and we can't spend extra money being threatened by saying, well, prices are just going to go up. So that is why I voted no. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, City Council. Melanie Piana, West Lewiston. I just wanted to say thank you for your leadership and openness to listen and learn as a result of the voters. As someone who supported the campaign and knocked a lot of doors and listened to a lot of residents, I knew it was a challenge with the city charter amendment. It just made it so much more complicated than that people really didn't understand the duality role between the two. But ultimately, I supported it because of my history on city council, and I know what it was like to lay off so many people back in the Great Recession and how hard that was for the staff, but also how hard it was for council and the loss of city services that were going to happen, which is why I support a Headlee override. Now, the dynamics of a 5-year to a 10-year, which is what was discussed over the last 15 years and put into place, I think that still has merit to consider a timestamp on this going forward rather than in perpetuity. The great hope was that the state of Michigan was going to address Prop A and Headlee, and they haven't in the last 15 years. And unfortunately, the City Council has leadership on the Michigan Municipal League with our mayor on the board. And I know many on council go to MML's trainings to learn what they're doing. And the Police and Fire Trust Fund to help pay for those services in cities because of the lack of revenue sharing, that the state isn't filling its obligation, as well as Headlee and Prop A. They are 3 hits to a city's budget, particularly in older communities, which are the dynamics that this council is facing as a small city grappling with revenue. As a historian perspective here, shortly after the Headlee renewal, the first one, the city of Ferndale received a $50,000 grant from SEMCOG to look at doing a fire authority with Hazel Park and looking at ways to merge our fire services. So I encourage you to dig up that report, but basically it said that if there was a cost savings of 15%, over 15%, then it was worth looking at it. But the report, I believe, only said 10% would have been a cost savings. So there's opportunities, I think, here with police or recreation for partnering with other cities, but I think fire, I said at the time, you can't make people marry you, meaning you can't make a city partner with you if they don't want to. So good luck. You have my support.
Somebody coming up. All right. So I'd like to first share with you the purpose of the town hall, because we are going into the agenda now. The purpose of the town hall is to listen to constructive ideas from our community for an alternative proposal. There are a series of questions that we're going to go through, and so that means that people can come up numerous times to answer all the questions that we have. I mean, it might be something that you're clear on for one question, but you want to provide input for another. I would also like to share with you, I don't know if any of you, well, some of you may know this person, but Kurt Metzger sent me some information. He is the Director Emeritus of Data Driven Detroit, and I'd just like to share with you what he sent with me. Essentially, he's a data cruncher. And I'd like to share with you what he sent me. He indicated that 8 of 9 precincts voted no. Precinct 9 was 49.93% no. The no vote dominated absentee, early, and election day voting. The Far East Side precincts 6 and 7 had the highest number of percentages, highest no percentages, 59% and 61% respectively. Precinct 6 had the highest number of no voters, 1,025, and 7 had 328. He also mentioned that when he spoke with the Ferndale Diversity Organization over 10 years ago, it pointed out that residents of the Far East Side acted much more like Hazel Park voters than Ferndale voters. This is also where he pointed out that African Americans were not active players in the community, and that the share of renters was a mirror image to the share of owners, of white owners, and the lack of ties was shown by a large loss of the African American residents between 2010 and 2020. So that's just some data crunching that Kurt Metzger sent me. And now I'd like to open up discussion for what you would like to see and what we can do to bring about a successful proposal. So, what's that?
Oh, I didn't know if they were planning to bring it. Oh, it is up. I'm
It is
sorry.
up.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I didn't see it.
Okay.
My bad. Sorry.
All right. So, this is kind of council driven, so I think anyone opposed to going right into the questions? Okay. All right. Question number 1. How do we ensure our city's long-term sustainability while addressing residents' concerns about taxes and service levels. If anyone has any insight regarding that.
Could you specify what you mean by sustainability, financial, infrastructure?
Wait, just a minute,
environmental?
just a minute, Evelyn, just a moment. These are our topics right here? Am I-
Yeah, whoever's controlling the screen, move to the next, thank you, whoever's
Okay.
controlling.
All right.
God.
Am I addressing that?
So then the topics up there are Headlee override millage reductions, public safety facility special bond vote, millage model, alternative election options. So this is open forum, open dialogue.
Okay. Public safety facility, special bond vote. Most definitely. Most definitely. Just like we used to. You have a project, you ask us if we approve it. And like I said, I don't want the Jetsons cartoon. I want a fortress, a real solid fortress. And considering the fact that the Brester project at 72 units is only costing $23 million, Madison Heights just built an entire civic center for $14.3 million. Who are we asking?
Can I just get you to hold 1 minute, Evelyn?
Sure.
Will you pause the time for a second, please? So Evelyn, what we want to know is how should we approach the need? What are the suggestions?
Give us a special bond. Give us a special bond and make it reasonable. Make it reasonable, not 35 million, not the foo-foo this and the foo-foo that. Function. Function over aesthetics, always. We can afford function, we can't afford any more aesthetics.
So what does that mean to you, Evelyn? When you say you want a functional fortress, and you look at the current plan that we had put together for the facility, knowing that a public safety facility requires special construction, we have to have holding cells, we have to have a sally port, we have to have parking for both people, civilian vehicles and their...
Holding cells,
Yeah.
regarding the holding cells, since flooding is a big issue now in holding cells, and it seems to be the going trend, you put a drain behind that toilet that can't be plugged, and you do away with your flooding issues.
Okay.
You don't need an underground parking facility.
Sure.
You can put a parking facility with a green roof. Why does it have to be underground to flood? You don't need two lobbies stacked on top of each other. You don't need it to look like the Jetsons cartoon.
Okay. That's
Simple stuff. Basic, simple stuff. Insulated cinder block. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yes, understood.
Doesn't have to be pretty.
No, but it does have to be secure, and I don't think...
Secure, yes.
Yeah, I don't think insulated cinder block is rated for
Rebar,
public
iron
safety facilities.
construction, whatever.
But
But
understood.
it doesn't have to be pretty.
Understood. Thank you very much.
you.
That's very helpful, Evelyn.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak on the public safety portion or any of the other portions?
Hi, good evening. Stephen Kuzmanovich, 2037 Livernois. I was one of the no voters on this, which really pained me to do that. I've always supported everything that the city wants to do, but how this was put together and written, I just had to vote no on it. In terms of what's on the board here, public safety facility special bond vote, that's where we need to go with this. Our police and fire facilities are way outdated. I mean, going back to the 1950s. And I can't point the finger of blame at anybody up on this board right now, but I do point the finger at the past city council, mayors, police chiefs, fire chiefs. They should have had a capital plan to keep up with the facilities. because these facilities are way outdated. Can't speak to the police so much because I don't know what their specific needs are, but to the fire I can, because I was a firefighter 37 years. Not here, but in another community. And the fire service has really evolved in the past 20 years or so, and our needs are different. And what might appear to be frivolous to some people, I can tell you their needs. Crew quarters, gear decontamination, and the list goes on and on down the line. So, fire chief could speak to that better than I could because she knows what the specific needs are for this city. But I will tell you that that we need to do this. We need to upgrade these facilities, and we should have done it 20 years ago. Thank you.
Can you stay right there, Mr. Kuzmanich?
I'm sorry?
Could you stay right there, please?
Sure.
So when you said a public safety bond vote, do you mean specifically, do you mean like just a police bond, a fire bond combined, or what do you mean exactly?
Well, both facilities need to be upgraded, police and fire. The police department needs a new police station and new facilities. The fire department definitely needs that and more. And in terms of separating or combining things into one station, fire department wise, I don't think that could be doable, but we got the railroad tracks. The two fire stations have served us well for years and years. I don't know how you get around that, but I know that Ferndale Fire is busy enough that we need two stations, we need quarters for, apparatus and personnel. So.
I can assure you, we're definitely keeping two stations. There will be a west and east side station, yeah, for sure.
You can't get away with one here.
No.
In Hazel Park you could, because Hazel Park is this by this, not us. We're separated by railroad tracks, and we're a little bit wider and bigger, and so.
Right. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Just a moment before the next person comes up, I just want to ask council, what do you think about us just, when individuals come up to give their insight as far as what we have up there, to just let them give their suggestions, and then we ask them a question? How does that sound for you all? It sounds like that's how we're doing it anyway.
I love it.
Okay, all right, well then, we don't need the time clock. We can remove that. Okay. But I will ask that more people are able to come up. But I would ask that more, you're all here, I'd love to hear from all of you.
Everybody, say something. Kane, may as well speak up.
Okay, go ahead.
As far as the police department goes, and moving the headquarters to the other side of the railroad tracks, considering the fact that most of us live on the west side of the railroad tracks, can we get a guarantee that there will be patrols on our side of the tracks all the time and not just on call? We used to, our police department is 33% of what it was in the 90s, okay? 33%. And we used to have constant patrols. I used to see a police officer on our street at least once a day. Not anymore. And that is concerning. Now, considering the railroad tracks, no, the officers can't magically transport themselves over a train, so they will have to use 10 Mile or 8 Mile to respond to a call, which increases our response time from like 2 minutes to 10 minutes at least. So I would like a guarantee that we have patrols on our side of the tracks at all times.
I can actually offer some input on that. We do. So our officers are usually on patrol in different parts of the city at all times for that reason. to ensure that there are people deployed regularly across the city in the event that there is a train. The officers aren't usually just stationed at the station waiting to get called out. They usually are out and about so that we have a set number of folks on patrol shifts on west side and east side to eliminate that need. Now, if they have to call for additional support on either side and there is a train, then yes, they do have to take that bit of time to get around to one of the crossovers. But the police department is very thoughtful about ensuring that people are stationed on regular patrol shifts on each side so that we do have that like on-demand coverage.
And that's during shift change also?
I mean, I
Do we
can't,
stagger shifts?
I mean, I can't speak to the
All I'm
logistics of
saying
that.
is that my little hood does not get patrols as often as I'd like them to.
Okay.
And with all the schools being on the far west side of the city now, if there's an all hands on deck situation, no, I don't want to have to call Oak Park. We all know about schools and
No, I'm following.
crime and
I'm following you. I'm curious why you wouldn't want to call on our neighboring cities for support. We are part of
Oak Park's
co-response.
got their own issues.
Well, not in an emergency.
No, they are not there for us.
Interesting.
Just like Hazel Park is not there for us. They have their own issues. We should be able to rely on our own and not have to request assistance, which is going to take another 10, 15 minutes, request assistance from another city, and oh, maybe they have someone available and maybe they don't. Where is this coming from?
I think so.
You have something to say?
No, so what you're saying is you'd like to know for sure that we'll have,
Regular patrols on the west side and not just Woodward.
okay. Hear you, and we'll look into that.
Thank you.
So before we move to the next speaker, I'd like to social media manager to see if there are some questions online that we need to address as well.
Yes, thank you. There is one question. Other cities face the same revenue sharing challenges. How are comparable cities approaching the same challenges?
Very good question.
Same. So I know if we've heard a lot of like other cities near us, like Royal Oak's not dealing with the same thing because they have more land and whatever. So yeah, what other cities have had a similar situation, have been successful, right? Because a lot of us aren't. Well, I'm not an expert in the room of knowing what could be long-term sustainability. Like I don't have enough city experience. I can't come up with an answer. So yeah, what other cities in our state, in our region, in our country have had similar situations, probably not gonna be exact, but similar, and have had long-term solutions? And what did they do and how can we copy that? So that's good.
Thank you.
More of a question, but I don't know if you guys are answering or not.
I mean, I can take it, and then I'll probably let Council President Pro Tem Mikulski also add some. So in Michigan, which is really kind of where we narrow our focus, because other states have very different mechanisms for funding municipal governments, but in Michigan, municipalities of our size have very limited options for solving the revenue issue. So we can levy property taxes, we can levy an income tax. All cities of any size can do an income tax. It doesn't make sense for a city of Ferndale size. It would probably cost more to administer the income tax than we would receive in income taxes. Local option sales taxes are illegal in Michigan. It would require a constitutional amendment to authorize them. So the two primary mechanisms for a city Ferndale size are going to be property taxes, which is the primary that state law authorizes us to use, and revenue sharing from the state, which gets back to your question earlier, Rachel, which was about lobbying in Lansing. And I wanted to hit on that, and this lets me hit on that a little bit. So the Michigan Municipal League is sort of like the lobbying organization for cities and villages and townships. And it allows us to kind of have power collectively. And the MML has an entire team dedicated basically to just being in Lansing, working on this issue. Like, this is a full-time push for a lot of the Michigan Municipal League, because to get back to your second the question that you just asked, what are other cities doing, or how have they tackled this issue? Some have not. Some have not tackled it, and they have cut their services, and they have, wound down a lot of the things they're doing. A few very small entities have decided to dissolve their charters and go back to being townships, which makes it the county's problem. So it just really offloads the tax burden to everybody else. That's not an option for us, really. A city of our size, in where we're located in Southeast Michigan, like, giving up our charter is not really an option. I don't think anybody would like the results that would occur from that. And so, yeah, the options are, they're doing what we are proposing. Like, they are having to keep raising their property taxes, or in some cases, they're using, creative provisions in state law that allow you to do things like, there's a state statute that allows a city to create a special millage that is specifically only for the purpose of paying pension liabilities for public safety departments. So in theory, like, we could do something like that, and then the general fund wouldn't be Fund 101, the general fund of the city wouldn't be making that pension payment anymore. The special millage would be making that pension payment, and that would alleviate the general fund issue. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. So, right. Yeah, so the most analogous city right now is Berkeley. Berkeley's Headlee Millage failed, and they have not yet brought it back to the voters. And so they have been working through plans to wind down, figure out what wind down looks like on services. They had a little bit of a runway before that kind of started to peter out. And so they've been going through that. Part of the hiring of their new city manager Ms. Van Vleck, one of her main charges is to figure out the city's path forward, and whether they try again for a millage, or whether they accept and cut services and see how that goes for a while.
And through the chair, just to put a finer point on all of this. So we heard a little bit about Prop A and about Headlee rollbacks. Statutory revenue sharing is also an issue. We led the charge earlier this year, rallying a bunch of cities together, basically putting pressure on Lansing to effectively change statutory revenue sharing. It did not happen, but we are trying to push on them so that we can have a more equitable share, because that would make up a significant deficit in our budget. It's about $3 million annually that we could have. That we don't have, and it's a real big bummer. I wasn't sure what exactly I was going to say there, but to Councilmember Johnson's point, Berkeley did attempt to pass a Headlee override. It failed. They are going through a similar exercise where they're evaluating options, and I will say, as of Friday last week, a council member from Berkeley reached out to me personally to ask about our facilities assessment, because they are sensing the same issue. Maintenance is an issue. It is always the first thing to get deferred, because it's not sexy, it's not fun, and it's not essential services. So they're going through the same thing. We have Oak Park. Oak Park did pass a Headlee override in 2023. It was only 2.4 mils. But they passed it, I believe, to support services, and was it the rec center? I believe so.
I think so.
Anyway, all cities are going through this right now. It's just a matter of trying to find that delicate balance as to what we want, what we can afford, and what is most palatable in terms of how we move forward. Is it a bond? Is it a Headlee override, general purpose? Is there a charter amendment? Things like that. So, but I appreciate your comment.
Thank you for your patience.
Hi, my name is Christopher Hall. I'm at 1845 Syme Street. I'm actually one of the residents on the east side of in Ferndale. And just first, before I go into any kind of tangent, Ferndale Police and Hazel Park are awesome. Police department, they collaborate. There was a car explosion a few months ago, and they pulled people out. And for folks saying that they don't care, well, some of the Ferndale population actually pays for the school millage on the east side. So just be very clear and actually talk in fact and not fiction. I think moving forward, I think a special bond vote is key, especially for public safety. That should be priority number one. This is my first time being engaged locally in the city council. This is probably my second meeting, especially with the political climate right now. And I think we need to start listening and stop mumbling under our breaths in this type of meeting and actually talk with respect. We will go further. We figure out a solution and leaving the ego at the door, in my opinion. I think some people here are very highly emotional, which is totally fine. But when I first came here, November 6, 2020, when I bought my home, I was paying $1,600 a month in regards to my FHA loan for my payment. Right now, I'm paying $2,100. That's how much the taxes went up on my home. And for me, that's the reason why I voted no. And also the Oakland County Park proposal was on there as well. And living literally right down the street from Martin Park, the whole street is all renters. There's parties from Airbnbs, there's 3 abandoned houses, and there's people who are like, it's not the best street. And I think that needs to be addressed first in regards to any kind of code enforcement. I think when people want to visit our city, they want to see the best of our city. And I don't think right now we're ready for a rec center. So I think public safety, like I said before, is very key. And I think that's the best route to go. And I don't think the cops are going to take 45 minutes to get to someone's home. When something happens, it's within 2 to 3 minutes they show up. So again, talking fact, not in fantasy.
Thank you.
Yep.
Before you leave, I just wanted to...
Again, like I said, just talk with respect and stop with the understood tone. No one wants to hear that right now. Just be respectful.
Okay, we're going to... All right. I do have a question regarding, there was a, I'm sorry, I just lost it here. Find it. So regarding, you said public safety, that should be a separate bond.
Correct.
Now, may I ask, what is your opinion regarding the operating millage as far as the 20 mills? Should we, are you, what does that look like to you? Is 20 mills, which is what we've been operating on, sufficient? Should we, how should we look at it as far as a lesser number of mills, or what does that look like to you?
If it saves me money in my pocket, if it's lower, I'm all for it. If it goes more, like I was even considering putting my house up for sale and moving to a different city. Because honestly, renting would be cheaper. For an example, my neighbor across the street, they pay about $3,000 a month and they're renting. They're working at one of the factories on the east side, and the taxes on their home is only like $900. And for them to pay double my mortgage almost, it's kind of sad. And even their son didn't go to college because of it. So he's helping his parents actually stay in the home. So I think anything that could help anyone make things less, I'm all for it. Yep.
Hello, Melanie Piana. I wanted to talk about a historical decision made prior to even before I was on city council in 2009. Back in 2008, I believe, or was it 2009, before the election, the city council had brought before them a proposal to redo City Hall and the police station. And the council voted that down at the time because they didn't feel that it was appropriate to spend general fund dollars and revenue coming in from taxes for a great recession that was coming. And so at that time, that project didn't move forward, and that also included the court building, and former mayor figured out how to update the court building to be ADA compliant because we were at a legal point where we might not be able to actually or have lawsuits because our court wasn't appropriate and we used the ticket revenue to pay for that. So I think that's important to understand. There were attempts made to make improvements to the facilities, but former councils passed it down. And then when the Great Recession hit and we lost 35 people, there wasn't a lot of people in place to actually do a capital improvement plan because there wasn't actually a capital improvement plan process in place in 2010, and we put one in place. So there has been evolutions in city processes as council has tried to improve how tax dollars are spent. And I know that this council is carrying that mindset forward. How do you improve city services? I do want to let people know that East Point and Hazel Park in 2015 passed a joint millage of 14 mills to combine their police and fire millage in order to keep that going. And that was for 20 years. And so that is 5 more years, but they have to replace that or renew that to keep those services going. So it's just another example of how cities are dealing with certain city services and paying for them. And it's specific to the city and figuring out who you can partner with to enhance and pay for those services. But ultimately, your two-part problem remains. One, you need Headlee renewed in order to pay for current staffing levels to maintain city services. And two, you need new revenue to pay for facilities. You can't have new facilities if you don't have people to manage them. So I completely understand your two-part problem, and I think a Headlee override millage is probably would be the most successful on a May ballot, and then look at ways to bond out in the future. And bonds are also, they end as well. And so you also are going to need to renew that at some point with a future residency of Ferndale saying costs have gone up and we need to maintain the buildings, not just build new, but maintain them over a 15-20 period. And they didn't do this in the county either, right? Which is why the county is moving many people into downtown Pontiac and redoing the buildings to offset millions of dollars of maintenance that was deferred on the county buildings. So this is something that a lot of government public entities deal with, whether they are cities or counties or anything else that owns property and maintains a building. So this is not something new to Ferndale as part of the solution-making problem. And I appreciate those being very mindful tonight of the discourse with dignity. There's nothing more important than feeling welcome in your own town hall and your city hall. And so giving everybody a voice to be heard without feeling attacked and bullied behind the scenes or behind you is an important part of being a Ferndale resident, honoring what we value here. Thank you.
Hi, Trent Schmitz, Sonoma Street. Maybe I should have said this earlier. Personally, the one big one for me that another woman had mentioned, but you asked us all to come up and say, is the timeline, the fact that it was in perpetuity, that, that was hard for me. The other thing, I live, Sonoma Street's 1 block right next to Martin Park. We walk through the park multiple times a week. I'm fairly late to the game for the community center discussion. I know you were involved with a lot of citizens in doing that. I just question, as someone who lives and walks through the park quite a bit, the pavilions and the new pickleball courts and everything are awesome. People use that park constantly. When I saw the plans for the community center or rec center, whatever it is, I just really start to question the need. Restrooms, totally understandable for the splash pad. I just wonder what citizens' reactions were when the plans were released. Like, was it a, yes, we need this, we will use this? Or were the reactions like it's a kitchenette and a room, to host parties in during the winter, which is fine. I just didn't know if it's what the city necessarily expects when they hear community center.
I mean, I can say that, yeah, there were community meetings and community involvement in the planning of the facility. When we floated our final draft proposal, there was some concern about it and some issues, and that went back, including some shared by some of my colleagues on the council. And so we did kind of send it back and say, let's maybe make some tweaks to this. Then that went through an additional sort of town hall meeting for people to weigh in on. But I will say there were a lot of people who came to the community meetings and offered, contributions for what they'd like to see in the facility and that kind of thing. So we definitely had a decent number of people in the community who wanted a full community center. And I think folks had slightly different views of what, you can't make something that meets everybody. But I think it got there through a lot of that community engagement.
Before you leave, so I just wanted to ask you, so from what I'm hearing is that there didn't seem to be a need for what we were proposing regarding the recreational. It's actually a facility right now. So may I ask, what would that look like for you in the future, and what you would like to see?
Yeah, and like I said, it's, I wasn't involved in the planning stuff. I could have totally been more passionate. It was just the reaction when I saw the plans to it. I think, I could definitely see the room that was in there being used for like parties during the winter, because that pavilion is constantly rented out on the weekends and stuff for people using it. But aside from that, I think I struggled with, bathrooms for the splash pad. But for me, like, I don't know that there's a need for it, but what I use, like a gym or something like that, or community center that you could maybe spend more time at, or if one party is renting it out, it kind of renders it unusable to everyone else a little bit. So that was like, it'd be hard to, use, but.
Through the chair, I can tell you that there were two specific groups that were interested in the recreation center. That was youth, parents of youths. So like you have the soccer leagues, baseball leagues, they wanted a place where they could gather and have league discussions and conversations, and where the kids could play, and interact with each other, as opposed to all of these teams that are being out in different parks and fields. And then you had the seniors. The seniors wanted a place. They have lost their place when Kulik Center closed. And they're currently meeting in Hazel Park. And their concern is if they don't have a place to gather, that they're really no longer the Ferndale seniors.
Yeah.
So that's what I can speak to.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Dave Cottrell from Beaufield Street. Just some concerns or stuff. And the last Headlee proposal was said to be a perpetual proposal, and I kind of looked at it that it would take away the control of the citizens to say yes or no. It would just be like kind of forever. And of course I heard all the thing, they'll be reducing because of perpetually increasing prices on housing. I'm wondering, where did the idea of the perpetual length time come from? I'm wondering if the Michigan Municipal League kind of proposed it, and then the state legislature adopted it because the Michigan Municipal League wanted it. So I'm just trying to wonder how that came about. And can we can still have like a 5-year or 10-year limit?
Yes. So there's no. Yes, so we can have a time limit. You could have really any timeline on a Headlee. I think most jurisdictions try to not go less than 5 if they can help it, because it gives you that sort of 4-year plan financial stability. You can go by law up to 20 years for an override, and then after that, the only next thing is in perpetuity. The reason we chose perpetuity is because we were trying to do these facilities, and in order to do these facilities, we have to do bonds. So, one way or the other, we're paying debt service. And so it would have a hard time issuing bonds if we couldn't say that we were gonna have the revenue for the 30-year life of the bonds. And so we wouldn't be able to get our bonds underwritten and sold. And so that's kind of why we had done that. If we are going to go the route of like a facility bond in this way, same result, but not in the general fund. It would be the debt millage that would be affected by that, related to the debt service. And so we wouldn't need that. We wouldn't need perpetuity for that.
Okay. So perpetuity is because you had a limit of 20 years or perpetuity? Okay, but you might be going a different method, so you could just, 10 or 20 could work out.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you so much, Donnie.
Well, I'd have you there, though.
Okay.
What do you see, should we come up with a bond, with a proposal for Headlee that we can agree on for the most part as a community? What time frame do you see as being the most sustainable?
Me, I look at the 10-year, just because you can make plans, you have a long-range plan, but then somebody can, you can look back and say, okay, did we do well over 10 years? If we went to 20 years, it would just seem like, oh, that happened a generation ago. I forgot all about it. So I would suggest 10 years, but that's just my idea. Thank you.
And I will note that our current override that is expiring next year was a 10-year.
Yes. Hello.
Hello, Ray Crusette, Pearson Street. I just wanted to say that I think that the combining the operating expenses and the public safety on one initiative doomed it, and the word perpetuity doomed it. I'm aware that Trenton recently passed a bond specifically for police and fire. I think it's a 30-year, $35 million bond, and it was voted in overwhelmingly, and it is for upgrading the infrastructure, buildings, that sort of thing in Trenton. Similar size city, similar size population, some density differences. And I think separating that from operating expenses is a smart way to go.
And yes, and I am looking at the Trenton and what they did, because yeah, they did exactly kind of what I'm looking at that as a model right now, as a potential proposal.
Yeah, I'm sure there's other good examples too.
Sure, but that's yeah, it's very recent in time, so it's like nice to look at.
Right, it's fresh.
Yeah.
Do we have any online questions?
Yes, we have a few, and these are as typed. Why was the FD/PD overlooked for 30 plus years while we continued to develop and expand our parks and recreation? Let me know if you'd like me to move on.
Can you just say that one more time?
Absolutely. Why was the FD/PD overlooked for 30 plus years while we continued to develop and expand our parks and recreation?
Next question.
So one was about mills. Why don't we use 5 mills for public safety? I don't know if you want to clarify anything about the mills. And then we also have a bonds question. How many open bonds does the city currently have? And what is our current bond rating? And then just one more after that.
So I was just wondering if city staff wants to chime in as far as bond rating and how many open bonds that we have, because we don't have the answer to those questions. Go ahead and ask the next question while we're waiting.
This is more of a comment. I just felt like maybe there could be some clarification. If there is any kind of millage increase, regardless of what it is for, they also should not remove city services. The city has to look internally at the spending and overstaffs. That's what I have for right now.
Joe Gaccio, current city manager. The credit rating is currently AA minus, and the city has 2 outstanding bonds. There's a 2015 road improvement bond that will wrap its funding next year, and I believe that bond will be paid off in 2035. And then you have the capital improvement bond for the parking deck, or the dot, that is paid for from parking revenues, not the general fund. So that is not recognized on the city's bond capacity.
Just for clarity, neither bond is coming out of the general fund.
The road bonds are part of the annual debt millage. They were voted in.
Yeah, but that's That's a dedicated bond.
Correct, that's a dedicated debt millage, not the general fund.
Yes.
Hi, folks, again, Mary Kay. I'd like to address, when you were going through the percentages of the different districts or the amounts of people. One of the things and I was there 10 years ago. And in fact, I was in cahoots with another good friend, and we had a campaign against the Headlee Amendment. Maybe you might remember it. And at that time, when it came to the east side, what we found, and what I even found, is that normally those people on the east side knew nothing about a vote, knew nothing about even the Headlee Amendment. I mean, and we went door to door to door. And like they said at that time, we felt left out of everything as far as the city of Ferndale was concerned, because they lived on the other side of the railroad tracks. That's what they would say. And you would have had 100% vote. If you would have put the millage, and another thing they were concerned when they did find out about it was police and fire. If you would have put police and fire on this ballot with a cap of 5 years, you would have had a vote. I mean, they would have had a vote at that. You would have had a vote at that this time here, because that's what people want. And as far as a community center, a rec center, and so on and so forth, those are extras. That's the fancy part of the Headlee Amendment. So what I would do is put what I'm telling you, 5 years, put public safety, and leftover goes to everything else. I have one other concern about something here. Is the bank on 9 Mile, has that not already been sold to the for the fire department?
We have purchased the bank. Yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes, we have purchased it.
So it has been bought. So we have that to go, whatever you're going to do with that, for the fire department.
Right.
So we have a building and we have property there, plenty of it, as far as parking and so on and so forth. Even for City Hall, if you think about it. One other question is, we have quite a few buildings that are empty lately, what I am seeing. Why can you not include, like I said, what we have left over with public safety in the Headlee Amendment, include some of these buildings to be put in use? Why couldn't one be used as a rec center? Save some money. Thank you.
Actually, Mary Kay, could you stay for a second? I have a question for you.
Yes,
so
what is it?
I know that you were, professionally, you were a labor negotiator.
Yes, I was.
So I want to pick your brain for one moment on that topic. So the rub we have is, because about 83% of the city government is union.
Yes.
We know that every 5 years, when our CBAs are up,
yes,
we know that those costs are going to go up. And so that's kind of one of the pressures we have, is because of our high unionization rate, which is great. We love that. You know, the problem with doing the overrides is that at some point, if someone does, if it does just can't get through for any reason, we have a lot of CBAs we have to abide by with compensation rates. You know, and I think part of the reason we struggle is, you know, getting a Headlee with enough term that gives us the comfort to be able to negotiate in good faith and know that we can follow through on our commitments. And, you know, getting your perspective on what that looks like, you know.
I can tell you right now that 10 years ago, that was the exact same thing that was said about this ballot, about this Headlee Amendment. We need it for negotiations. I mean, what has been put into this Headlee Amendment this time, except for that time frame, is exactly what was said 10 years ago. And I have the papers to show you. So nothing has changed. I mean, for anyone here who wasn't there at the time, nothing has changed. Now, as far as negotiations, 10 years ago, we were actually in negotiations. And when I say we, I mean the city of Ferndale was in negotiations with the fire department at the time. How I know that is because I was passing out literature on the day of the vote, and one of the fire inspector, and there was only one. I don't know how many fire inspectors we have now, but there was only one at that time. How many?
Just one.
Just still have one.
Just one.
He was, he was there passing out his literature. And I said, well, why are you doing this? And then I said, where do you live? He says, Alma. I said, Alma, Michigan. I says, oh, so you want an increase in your wages, and you want us to do that, and you're not even here in the city. You live in Alma. Well, that's kind of nice because it isn't going to cost you anything. So I do understand what the negotiations and what you're talking about and so on and so forth. And that's a good call. I will say that, because that is one of the things that we have done, and I'm sure you will see the fire department and maybe the police department, if they get stuck with negotiations, come before the city council, and say, hey, we're in negotiations. We need your support, Ferndale. Come on out and support us. And that happens with a lot of different things that you have that go on around here. And so that I understand. That's why I still say, if you put it out for just public safety, you're going to get a vote.
Thank you.
Not that I'm looking forward to a vote. I'm not, but you will get a vote.
And while you're there, Mary Kay, so did you say that it should be, or I think I heard someone say a 5-year bond instead of?
Yes, the gentleman before me or had said it should have mentioned a 5-year bond. I mentioned a 5-year bond also. You could even go, we went what, how many years? 10 years now?
Yes.
Go 10 years, but I would not go more than 10 years. But if you put a cap, you've got to put a cap. That was a big complaint. When I talked to people, that was their complaint. Hey, we don't know when this is never going to end. Here you are, we're giving them money and it's never going to end, which it wasn't. I'd be dead before that bond ended. I hope I'm joking, but
I hope you're joking too.
But that's the way it looks. I mean, when you go out and really talk to the public of why they voted no, and I think mostly, even up to now, it's public safety. They're all agreeing with the public safety.
Thank you, Mary.
And I just wanted to, I know that the Yes campaign, I just wanted to state that I know that the Yes campaign covered all quadrants of the city, so maybe that's the reason why there was such an overwhelming support of a no vote, because we actually did cover, I canvassed, and I think some of that team is here, but we did cover.
Well, I hope it was. I really hope it was, because I felt bad at the time we living in Ferndale, thinking everyone over here, they don't know anything. They're not being told anything. They said they'd have the time, if there was a leaflet to be passed out or anything from the city, they never received anything. No one ever said anything to them. And, so that there, I hope, that sounds good to me. If it was, maybe it was a good thing then, as far as this side of the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. No one's in line. Do we have anything? Oh, go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Dave. I didn't see you.
Okay. Two questions or comments. One regarding the DOT. I always hear about it's from the revenue fund. It's the DOT's revenue that's paying for it. But I think ultimately, especially for the first year, it ended up being the general fund had to pay for it because the revenue fund wasn't paying it. No? Didn't it come out of the general fund pocket?
Not a dime.
What happens when the revenues of the DOT doesn't have enough money to pay for any payments that have to go to the bank? What happens?
Then it would if we didn't receive any parking funds, but we receive enough parking funds every year to pay for the DOT.
You didn't receive it in the first year.
Yes, we did.
Huh?
Yes, because it was delayed. We opened in 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic, but we didn't have to make our first payment till 2021. So during that period, we were able to raise enough money. What we did use is some of the ARPA funds.
Okay. And ARPA is what?
ARPA is the American
Rescue
Plan.
Okay. Which would have gone to the general fund, but we used it for ARPA for paying for the DOT.
It was council's
It
perspective.
would not have gone to the general fund. ARPA was federal funds and they're restricted, so ARPA dollars cannot go to a general fund.
So ARPA fund goes to capital improvement projects, or what does it go to?
It can go to really any investment that would improve the community in spaces that were impacted by the pandemic. So improvements to various community services, could be capital improvements to buildings that are going to deliver those services. I think we've used some of ours for improvements to certain programs that serve people.
Fire trucks, a
Fire
lot of fire equipment.
Public safety was one of the primary categories the federal treasury gave governments to look at, usually police and fire departments.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then how much should we pay to buy the bank property? Because some of us are very concerned that we pay way too much.
0.2.
It was 1.2. We paid less than the appraised value. Yeah, 1.26, and we paid less than the appraised value. And I know Evelyn is shaking her head, so I want to make sure I correct this. We did in fact pay less than the appraised value because we had a second appraisal done and had it appraised for the use as a government facility, not as a bank. Because it was appraised as a bank property when we had the first appraisal done. The appraiser used essentially the wrong comparisons.
Okay, wasn't one of the first appraisals for like 800,000?
Yes, because it was for a bank property, but the government doesn't run a bank. We were going to use it as a government facility. And so the value of the facility is different when it's appraised in that lens.
Okay. Because I would have much rather have paid like 800,000. I was just really afraid we'd just spend money like.
We would like to have paid 800,000, but we also had to negotiate with a
bank,
a regional bank that owned the property. So,
Okay, thank you.
Hello.
Hi, I live on Pearson Street, Annie. I voted no because I wanted the city to focus in on what we need, not what we want. We need police and fire. I voted yes if we do have a mill specifically. I wouldn't use a rec center. I think that's a want, not a need. So I'm there, and a lot of the people in the city think that our council or our government has overspent on a lot of different things. We could have, we've had a lot of, what do you call those? No, well, the $2 million oopsie at the DOT, when we didn't figure that one out. And then we spent a lot on the bike lanes, but, bike lanes are great. A lot of people didn't like the execution of them. So there was a lot of, people were just kind of tired of the excess spending. A lot of people are getting laid off right now, all over the Detroit area. We just have to be cognizant and be a little bit more fiscal. And a lot of the citizens have lost faith in council, thinking that you're not being fiscal enough and being a little bit more tight on the money. And that's all. We're just asking you to do that. So if you bring back a more reasonable bond, a lot of us know that there are needs the city needs, so we're going to vote yes on them, not the wants.
Before you go, so can I ask then, because the whole purpose of tonight is to find out what's reasonable. I know that you said the recreational facility was a want.
I believe so.
But what is a reasonable need as far as, what is a?
Police and fire are a need.
Okay, now what about for the Headlee in itself, for the number of mills for the Headlee?
I think that
itself?
was too much. I think we need to do a lot more cost cutting in the city and be. I'm very fiscal. I moved out at 17. I'm very tight on money. I have no debt. I don't hardly own anything on my house, but I don't want my house to become, you know, if I'm paying $1,200 a month, that's too much because I want to retire. I might have to move out of the city too as well. If I want to retire, I believe that if the millage keeps going up, I'm going to have to move out of this town. Maybe a little bit more reasonable, a mill or two, to keep city services in an override, but I really think that try to budget with what you have right now. That's all I'm asking. And then when it comes to police and fire, we'll probably need some sort of bond, like 5-10 year, or, you know, whatever the mill is, 3.5% to 4%, 4 mills to pay for the police and fire. We don't have to go too extravagant, but they do need new facilities.
So the 20 mills you feel is too much?
I'd have to crunch the numbers a little bit more, but I probably more going down to 18 or 18.
Thanks,
Annie.
Hello.
Hello, Jim McLucky, Emerald Street. So I think my main comment is I just want to make sure that we maintain the quality of life we have in Ferndale at the very least. So that means, you know, certain things cost money. Let's make sure that our quality of life about stays the same, because I personally am not interested in finding out what happens when we have to cut $4 million from the budget. That means fewer services. That means maybe I have to contract somebody to come pick up my branches when I'm cleaning up my yard because of those, you know, Chinese trees that grow crazy. And I see them down my street, and so a lot of people are dealing with that. So I think that's the main thing. I did vote yes. I understood why it was wrapped up the way it was, but a lot of people disagreed with that. So, you know, here we are. Police and fire are obviously important, so I think that's an obvious yes from, you know, most residents. I don't think you're going to get much pushback. It's the Parks and Rec stuff that's, I think maybe a lot of people don't see themselves in Parks and Rec in terms of like, what am I getting out of it? So, you know, I don't want to pay for it. I've been here for 17 years, so started as a renter, homeowner. Now I have a child, so I kind of, you know, started young bar hopping days, and now got a kid who's using more of the facilities and stuff. So I've, you know, seen both sides of things, and for the longest time I paid for stuff that I didn't use, and now I'm using that stuff. So I think, you know, people generally need to remember that. Obviously your personal finances, like, are very important, but you have to also consider you're part of a community. You're paying for stuff that benefits other people. And that's just kind of like, that's just how it works. Yeah.
Can I just keep you there for a second? You mentioned that you voted yes. So you voted yes on both proposals?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask what made, you said because you knew how that goes, but can you just explain why you did that?
Yeah.
The way it was written, et cetera.
Yeah. It made sense once, so you can even like look back at some of my comments from like 7-8 years ago on Facebook, and I was very much like, oh, the city like taxes so much, and taxes here are crazy and stuff like that. But then I started understanding how like Headlee actually worked, and like Headlee rollbacks and stuff, and then I was like, okay, so this makes sense. I think I bought my house right when the first override passed. So like, you know, I saw, as you know, Chris has seen, my bill went up, and I was like, oh crap, this sucks. And it stunk for a while, and for a few years it stunk, and then it came back down. So the idea that you're buying a house somewhere, obviously you need to be able to afford it throughout the entire time you're there, but you know, at the beginning it's probably going to stink a lot, and then maybe over, you know, the long term it's going to be a little bit better. But so anyway, so as I understood it, the reason why we did the perpetuity was because to secure a better bond. So like, it just made sense to me. And so that was like an easy yes. And then the second proposal about just fixing the problem moving forward about maintenance, like that's a no-brainer. I'm a problem solver professionally. Like I think I just care about solutions. Give me a problem, give me a solution. Let's fix the problem moving forward so we don't have to like keep having this argument every 10 years about like maintaining our buildings and stuff like that. So
What can we do better? And I'm sorry to keep putting you, but you know, I'm just, you know, I want to just hear what you have to say about it.
I don't have a good answer to that. I don't know. Like I'm just like of the general mindset, like we vote for you guys. I trust you guys to do the work so that I don't have to understand everything. You know, you have a job. It's your day to day. You need to understand the ins and outs of it. So I don't have to, and so nobody else should have to. So, yeah, I don't know if that makes me just like a blank check pushover or a shill or whatever, but I don't know. Like, you guys are doing this day-to-day stuff. It's not easy. You're not going to make everybody happy. You're going to make hard decisions that a lot of people don't like, and a decision has to be made, and it's going to make some people upset and make other people not upset, and it's, you know, it's just how it goes, I guess. Thanks.
Hi, Ray Crusette, Pearson Street, back again. I just wanted to return to the DOT. You mentioned that we were making payments on it, and that there was enough revenue coming in from parking to cover it. But I just wanted to clarify that parking in general is a revenue stream for the city. The DOT is used all the time as a poster child for waste and oversizing. In other words, day in and day out, it's only half full. It's designed for something that's not being built on as far as structurally. It's over-engineered for its needs. And how do we know that public safety, that the design that we have for that doesn't have its thumb on the scale as far as sizing, that it's not excessive in the way that the DOT was? Because the DOT, in a way, is gobbling up funds from the rest of parking in the city that could be used for a revenue stream to support the city.
Through the chair. Regarding parking funds, actually, when you implement parking funds, they can only be used for parking purposes. So you can't put up a bunch of meters and say, we're going to use all of our parking for police officers. They have to be invested in your parking program. So it's resurfacing the lots, it's building a parking structure. So that's where we are with the parking fund.
Because it's an enterprise. Parking is an enterprise function, so the revenues stay within that enterprise function. They don't go to the other general fund. They don't go to the general fund.
No. Just like the bike lanes were all purchased with Act 51 dollars. Act 51 dollars are the taxes that you pay when you buy gas. The state distributes those monies to communities to do road investments and road improvements. Okay. So everything that was done on Woodward was all covered under Act 51 dollars. Not a dime of general fund. What this bond or this millage would have covered, not a dime of that would have been paid out of the out of Act 51 dollars to make those bike lane improvements.
So are you saying that there was very little incentive to get the DOT right-sized?
I don't know what you mean by right-sized. Well, you have to look at, the DOT was built pre-COVID. And a lot of things changed after COVID. Downtown Ferndale changed after COVID. We built the dot, we designed the dot to support the amount of parking that was needed, because at the time we had a lot more 10, 11, 12, 1 a.m. business in Ferndale. Now, around 10 o'clock, I would say half of the downtown is empty. It doesn't support the businesses that it used to. The bars aren't busy like they used to be pre-COVID.
Yeah, and admittedly, things have changed. So as far as public safety, the police department used to be much larger, a lot more personnel.
Yeah, and they're all paid out of the general fund, which is that this millage would have supported.
And yet we need a much larger building for them, even though the staff has shrunk.
So their business has changed. What they do, the equipment that they use, the processes that they use. One example is their, what is it, the place where they lock the stuff up?
The evidence room.
Evidence room. That's packed to the gills. It was designed for a process that was done in 1964. We didn't have female officers. We converted closets, literal closets, we converted in the police station and the fire station to make a bathroom and a shower for female officers to change in. There's no equity there.
I get it. I'm just asking questions about right sizing.
Sure.
As related to the DOT, but in terms of public safety.
Absolutely.
Also.
Absolutely.
And I don't know that we've gone through, I know there have been a number of discussions and there's been a task force. In light of everything, re-examining the size, the way we're sizing everything, and the cost, of course.
Well, and I can tell you that, my intentions had this millage gone through and we started the development on the buildings. And I know that there were buildings, designs that were presented. Those weren't final. Those were really just, could we fit what we think we need on that property? It wasn't anything specific. There weren't electrical, plumbing design, it wasn't that type of design. My hope was that council would support a citizen group that would help oversee the project. So there would be individuals from the project, from the public, that would help oversee some of the design aspects and the management of the project, along with staff, obviously. It wasn't going to be completely, resident run.
I mean, had the Headlee passed.
Had the Headlee passed and we got funding for those facilities.
Well,
because I think it's important that the residents be involved in the development of that project. We slightly did that with the DOT. I think we missed it when we didn't include them as the project was building. As we were going through, we did the initial review of having public, comment about what they would like, what they wouldn't like, and we tried to meet that. But we kind of stopped at the point that construction started. And I think that may have been a slight miss on our part, on previous council, actually, because except for Mayor and I don't think the rest of council was here.
So I will also, just to kind of touch on that, is that was actually the intent and will still be the intent. Should we have a successful Headlee, is to have an oversight kind of committee. I don't know what that's called or what that looks like, but I think that would assist, maybe increase the trust in the community regarding where the dollars are going to and how the facilities will be maintained. So that is the intent moving forward. We'll have to see where we go with that, but that would be, I think, a good move. And
I have at least one obnoxiously frugal person on the committee.
Are you
volunteering?
Right.
Moving forward.
Madam Chair, if I might, something that came up in a couple questions, and I think one of the online questions, and I wanted to circle back to make sure we kind of touched on it.
Okay.
One thing I think maybe Ms. Frank, it was part of a question that you may have asked earlier, and I'm sorry if I'm misspeaking, but noted the relative amounts of mills that are levied in different communities and why ours is relatively high and maybe some of our neighboring communities is relatively low. what I heard a lot when I was out knocking doors over the course of this year and talking to residents was sort of questions along that line. And I think a really important thing to remember is that 1 mil is worth something different in every community. And so, you know, folks said, well, Royal Oak has all of these really nice things, but they only have, their overall operating millage is about 17 mils. It's 17, tell you their general operating millage total is 17.6187 mils. But that's because 1 mil in Royal Oak is $3,886,862.03, whereas 1 mil in Ferndale is $952,969.04. And so for the 17.6187 mils that Royal Oak charges in the current taxable year, 2024, they get $68 million in revenue. For our 24.5064 mils that we do, we get 23.3. So we're levying more mills, but it's actually worth less because the overall tax, the taxable value of our community is so much lower than Royal Oak. Birmingham is even higher, and so their mills are a little bit lower because 1 mil is worth a lot more. And so that's kind of the thing we fight against too, is that we have to levy more mills to capture the same amount of economic value because the overall taxable values in our community are lower than some of our neighboring communities. And that's also why some of our neighboring communities like Hazel Park, which has one of the highest millage rates of 33.9534 total operating mills between their charter and their overrides and a couple of other special operating. And that's because in Hazel Park, 1 mill is only worth $351,000. So even with those mills being higher than us, they're still earning less than we are in revenue. So I just think that's an important context thing that I tried to make sure I was talking to people out when I was knocking doors and stuff, is like 1 mil is not the same, where we are, and that kind of changes how the value of the numbers works too.
In regards to DOT, Mayor Coulter insisted on a mixed-use facility, which cost an average of extra $75 a square foot. On something the size of the DOT, that's a bundle. The DOT, over and above the bond that we passed to pay for the DOT, it went over budget $5-7 million. Nobody's actually come up with an accounting ever. $5-7 million over for concrete. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's not true.
Oh, isn't it? You've been here that long?
Oh, actually, I have the accounting documents. They're on the website. Yeah.
For the DOT?
Yep.
Does that include the water main break and the Wi-Fi and all that stuff that was added on at a later date?
Project closeout document. Please, I refer the community to that. I think it will be very helpful.
Closeout document. Well, that's nice. How many years later? It has been said in this council chamber that the DOT will never pay for itself. That was a couple years ago. And no, I'm not going to go back over every single council meeting to figure out who said what when. But it was said that it will never pay for itself. We upgrade the parking softwares and equipment every couple of years because we have to have the latest and greatest of everything. Asbestos was the latest and greatest of its time. Thalidomide was the latest and greatest of its time. Just because it's new doesn't mean it's good.
So it sounds like...
Is this pointless or what? So obviously you're still stuck. I'm sorry, Mayor.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, so Evelyn, it sounds like that you would like some sort of, I guess, recap or follow-up regarding what the DOT, what the DOT is. I'm just trying to follow you here.
That's part of it.
Okay.
What I'm saying is the track record is horrid. The track record over the past 15 years is horrid. And it's just one money pit after another. The skate park, which hardly anybody uses anymore because it was a fad.
It's filled every weekend.
No, it isn't. I live right near there. It is not.
All right, all right.
Okay, what I'm saying is, it was started by, I'm sorry, are there more people waiting? It was started by one of our pub owners in the city, and it was going to go into the east side, and when he moved to the west side, the skate park moved with him, and they built it on ridge sand.
Through the chair. Actually, that's not true.
It is.
I'm the one that initiated the want for the skate park. When I first came on council, there were 5 major projects I wanted to add to the parks. The splash pad was one of them, the skate park was another.
Because you're buds with the pub owner.
Can we,
Oh,
okay, just, okay. Councilmember Pollica, do you want to finish your statement? Or
no, I don't need to.
Okay, all right.
The rest of the community knows.
Stephen Kuzmanovich again. We're pretty much all in agreement in this room with what needs to happen. I just want to reiterate public safety, number one. Everything else, all the happy fun stuff needs to be put on the back burner. We desperately need upgraded police and fire facilities. I think the bond is the way to go. I will support that 100%. You guys all need to get to work. I'm not a municipal finance expert, but I'm sure with all the minds up there, you guys can figure out a plan. Reset it, hit the reset button, bring it back to us, and hopefully the outcome might be different. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. And for the listening public and the public, if you are interested in learning more about the DOT and all of the documentation related to the DOT, I'm going to read out the web address, which is unfortunately not super clever, but it's ferndalemi.gov/resources/dot-history-resources. That's ferndalemi.gov/resources/dot-history-resources. On that, you're going to find a complete write-up of the DOT project, its financial review showing that the total net cost overage after paybacks from the developer is only $799,000. And then it's going to have all the documentation from every council meeting that was ever held, and a conversation was held about the DOT. So construction documents, AIA documents, bid award packages, all of that stuff is on the website, as well as change orders, so things that required changes to the project over time for unforeseen circumstances, as well as a description of the construction closeout settlement that the city did with Colasanti. And the final settlement agreement was because we had claims related to issues that we had with Colasanti during their construction. And so they had to pay us money back for the project. So you can find all of that at that website. And, I'll ask the communications team to also sort of, as a follow-up to tonight's meeting, say, here are a couple resources that were mentioned at tonight's meeting, and maybe kind of do like a couple grab bag posts on the city's webpage that just directs people to these different places.
Hi, Melanie Piana again. Just wanted to reinforce my support for Headlee Millage renewal. Depending on the amount, we still want to have our 35 people remain on staff, and so I support a millage that makes that possible. And the part 2 of your problem solving, which is a special bond vote for prepare for new facilities, I would support that too. I also want to add that communities are, I love our police and fire, you know I do, I've said that over the years, but communities are more than police and fire. There are also the city services that we rely on, which is code enforcement, and I know that people think our code enforcement should be doing more when they're already pretty stretched, and reducing and not having a millage renewal might not actually have a code enforcement staffing levels where some of those concerns are addressed by residents. But communities are more than police and fire. we are our families, we're our seniors, we're all age levels here, and we all need different things to make us feel welcoming and that we belong and that our well-being is also taken care of in a community. And while those fiscal constraints put pressures on all of that, I know that our city wants recreation in some form or another. And we almost chopped this whole thing off in 2010 as part of the reduction back then. And we have examples of cities of what happens when you reduce a city's budget to only police and fire. It's called emergency management. And we have seen cities who were at the far end of the spectrum of didn't have the revenues to pay for their services, were forced to make cuts. And when you cut quality of life items out of your city budget, it reinforces a cycle of decline. And that decline is people don't want to live in your community because you don't have all the well-being and the belonging components beyond police and fire to attract people to be in your city. I'm not saying that's what's happening here. I'm saying, or could happen, it could happen when you get rid of your recreation department. Because the recreation department helps put programming in at the skate park and other parks facilities. And so that might be impacted. So what I think is just being mindful. I trust all of you to be mindful of balancing these choices going ahead for our community and what we're willing to pay for. What I'm not willing to pay for is people parking for free in Ferndale and me subsidizing it with my tax dollars. And I would hope that they would pay their fair share in parking fees when they park here, so I don't have to keep subsidizing their parking in the facilities that we create. So that's all I gotta say about parking, but I would spew a lot more about parking later if you would ever want to hear me talk about it.
Any questions online? Or comments?
Yes, there's a lot of discussion going on online right now. I'm going to work with IT to get you all the comments and everything. And I've been answering questions in the background, working with staff. So a lot going on here, but I did pull a couple of comments I thought would be useful. One of them's a bit long. It said, "Hello, I had to leave the meeting due to home obligations. In the future, if proposed questions can be provided to the public, we could craft a response ahead of time. Here are some initial thoughts. With regard to city services, provide a summary of the services offered to residents and the costs associated, and ask if residents still want to pay for them. Let me know if I'm going too fast or you want me to repeat anything. Number 2, provide a minimum operating budget scenario that satisfies the state mandate for services. Outline what would be cut. For example, pausing spend on the DDA and parks development saves $2 million. Number 3, sustainability of Ferndale is going to depend on the cost of living. I know people who moved or don't look in Ferndale due to taxes. A proposal that reduces taxes has a better chance of passing." So that was one comment. Another one I pulled is, "I live in East Ferndale. I think passing a public safety proposal would hugely benefit all of us, enhance and include East Ferndale, which will help grow that side of Ferndale. Until we are in the green, we should just table the rec and community center." And the last one is, "We're going into a cold season where having a rec center would be wonderful on days where we'd like to do something outside the house that isn't just the Ferndale Library," which is great. And that's what I got.
So one topic we haven't really, we've had a little bit of conversation, and I think Michelle, oh, you're still here. Michelle, you brought up very early on was the date of the next election and when to have it. So the reason that I had 2 reasons for proposing going with the May election. And yeah, I know it sucks that it's not free. But the reason I had chosen it was, 1, the schools are going to be doing it anyway, so there will be an election happening. And 2, resolving this sooner in the year, I think, is going to help us with retaining staff. We already have a lot of staff who are very, very anxious, and I think waiting a whole 12 months to know what the state of their jobs is and the fate of their position is a lot to ask. Understandably, some staff they have a lot of feelings about what happened with the vote because, it's the community did not say they did not support the staff. That's not what the community was saying. And we're trying to stress that to folks, but it's hard not to feel that way sometimes when you're already a relatively low paid public service employee. That, perhaps the community doesn't necessarily value what you're doing every day. And so we're trying to reassure them that's not the case, that everyone values us highly. We just need to figure out a different solution, that it was more of a presentation problem. It was more of a proposal problem than a value of services. But I think, the sooner we resolve this issue, I think that will pay dividends for not losing some of the incredible staff that we have who do have a lot of time here at the city, who do know how things work. Once you lose talent and once you have that brain drain, it's really hard to retain it. It took us, since the big cutbacks in 2010, we're still kind of filling in some of the brain drain that had happened when we had to make those kind of cutbacks. So, it can take a really long time to rebound from that. And so I was really just looking to find the quickest opportunity to do it. But yes, I do own and acknowledge that, yes, my proposal was not the free one. I do own that.
Through the chair. Dave, I'd like you to investigate with our city clerk. And the information that was shared that they said that the election for August 5th would not cost the city. I don't believe that's right. Next year, August 5th is not it's not a primary. It's an off year. So even August 5th would cost and November 4th would cost as well because that's the local election.
Correct, yeah. I will check with Dean, but that's my understanding as well.
Yeah, so any election we had next year is going to cost us roughly 35 grand.
Yeah, the other question that
which is one of the reasons why we tried to put it out in November, so we didn't have to pay for it.
The other question Dean and I had that we were going to try and confirm was if the schools decide to take the May date first and then we go along with them, would the schools be covering that or would it be
Or would we have to split it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, because there is going to be a school millage next year.
Did not think about
in
that.
May.
Is that a millage or a bond?
I thought it was a millage.
Okay, I didn't watch the.
It could be a millage and a bond. They haven't posted anything, but their conversations have been that they're going to put something on the May ballot. Now, what I don't know, is it a renewal or is it new?
Interesting.
Hi.
Hello, my name is Dale Villarolo. I live on Prairie Street. I served on both the Facilities Task Force and the Financial Review Committee. I'm the original screw taxes person because I think a lot of us are. One of the reasons that I wanted to be involved on these committees was so I could learn more about how things work in this town, to help me make better decisions with things. I'm finding out that there has been just a lot of misinformation, and I just want to urge our community, contact City Council, contact those of us that were on the committees, and we'll help you answer some of your questions. I've seen misinformation up at this meeting tonight. And it kind of bothers me because I don't feel that we can all make the right kind of decisions with misinformation. And that's kind of been one of my big takeaways with this whole thing. Thanks.
Thanks, Dale.
We still have time here, and let's recap what we've kind of heard. So what I'm hearing is that there was from some that Headlee would be supported if it were less mills, possibly. And I'm hearing a support for a special bond for our public safety. Now what we would have to do is craft what that looks like, what that sounds like. What that looks like in the time frame in which we would allow for that to be, the time frame for which that would be sustainable for this community. So I guess that's not what I don't have those answers yet. And so if anyone would like to, maybe someone who hasn't spoken yet, if you have some ideas regarding that, or if I'm off base, please share what you think. We've got quite a few people in the audience. This affects all of us. So if you'd like to say something, please do. That's why we're here. We're trying to gather information. Thank you. Thank you for showing. And just so you know that we planned, there are people that could not be here tonight, and maybe, you know, online was a good version for them now, but we plan to hold a couple more, but I would have to speak with council to see what we would come up with as far as when and where, and talk about this format that we had, what we could do better. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, Jeff Crone, live at 540 East Hazelhurst Street. I voted yes because one of the reasons was the my tax value, the formula with the calculating how much more I would pay was very digestible. The thing I didn't understand quite was the disparity depending on when you moved in. It seemed like some people went up like $6,000 and some went up maybe $800. And I think that was, I didn't understand how the formula could be like that. So it didn't seem fair, although I was okay with it, but I could understand for those who would have a $5,000 or $6,000 increase, you know, that would be prohibitive for me. So I voted yes because I could afford that, but I could see why somebody who may not, because they says, I can't afford $6,000 more dollars. So I just don't understand how the formula was come up with that kind of disparity, it seemed to me. So that's my question really, is how was that formula calculated? And it seemed to be much disparity. So I wouldn't mind having some insight into that because I really don't know how that.
Does a yes person want to comment at all or no? Don't have to if you don't want to.
Don't put her on the spot.
Okay, then
I will.
Never mind.
I'll take this one. The way that Prop A and Headlee works is the longer you've been in your home, once you buy a home, your property is capped, and so the amount of taxes you pay is capped. So that is a function of state law. So if someone moves in, buys a home, makes substantial enough renovations to their home that can cause an uncapping, then that would make that person be at they would have to pay a higher taxable value. It would reset their taxable value. We can't control that. We can't make the result different for people. One of the things the state constitution also mandates is that there has to be equity in application of taxes. So a tax must be applied the same to every resident, the same rate to every resident. So we couldn't say, you know, oh, well, if you moved in and you were uncapped within the last 5 years, you pay this rate and other people pay this rate. You can't do that. Taxes have to be levied at the same rate for all taxpayers in a jurisdiction.
All right, and one more question about tax revenue sharing from the state. Who can we knock on their door about, can we have this more money back? Or, because I know it's in Lansing, but who do I talk to say, let's look at that closer?
Helena Scott is our state representative. Mallory McMorrow is our state senator. I would encourage you to also reach out to our county elected officials, because counties also have a say and a stake in what happens with revenue sharing. And so, you know, I would say lobbying Dave Coulter, Dave Woodward, the chair of the Board of Commissioners, the other commissioners on the county commission, the Senate Appropriations Chair. I believe she is sort of the one who is sitting on the bill in the Senate that would have implemented some of the reforms. It passed the House, and it has not even made it out of committee in the Senate. And so I would say Mallory McMorrow as our state senator, and really any senator in the state Senate, is really who to put the pressure on.
Okay, I would like to have a cheat sheet to follow that, because I'm not going to remember all that. So I wouldn't mind having a cheat sheet where I can do that as a citizen, because I don't know where to pull the straw from what bale of hay, you know, I don't know.
That's a great
Sort of thing. So I wouldn't mind having a cheat sheet so I can be empowered to knock on Lansing's doorstep and say, let's look at this. Because I don't know what to do with that. And I think in all fairness to everyone, that, you know, we need to keep our legislation and people in Lansing and county, like, hear from us, but I didn't know all that. I didn't know. So to put that in its very digestible form for citizens everywhere, I think that would be a benefit, because they're not getting, I didn't knock on any of those people's door about that.
Yeah.
I didn't know who to do. So I would appreciate that could happen. So,
Sure.
yeah.
One thing I want to note as well about the legislation that's currently stuck in the Senate is while it does do some reform of state revenue sharing, it doesn't go nearly as far as municipalities wanted or needed. We were very excited when we knew this was happening. When we got the documentation from the House Fiscal Agency and the Senate Fiscal Agency, they both showed us what jurisdictions would get under the new formula and how much it would change our revenues. And Ferndale is getting about $68,000 more a year under the new formula. It's not
I'd show
particularly
up
generous.
with a torch at Lansing. I really would. I'd show up in a bus to go there and say, wait, with this, I'm not going to have this. We need to look closer.
Right.
Although it's not going to
Otherwise-
fix the issue, it'd still be better.
Oh, yeah, hey, listen, I'll take $68,000. I'll take $100.
Yeah, so anyway, that's my question and my plea or appeal to have something that's more digestible to find out this information.
We could add that to the website as well.
Would
or
be
to,
very
you know, a
helpful,
post.
because, you know, I think city council takes a lot of heat, and it's not them, because I don't know who to talk to. And so I think we probably get a lot of heat that's not directed in a productive way, or a way that would benefit everyone. And well, Ferndale, because I live here, but in the state or wherever we are, Howard, we have it, but it's like, no, we have the bags of cash. It seems like, you know, Lansing. So it just doesn't seem fair. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd also like to add that I was speaking with the state senator yesterday, and they are going to be working basically overnight for the next few weeks to get things done, because they're going to be going into a session for the next 2 years. So when we put that information out there, I encourage you all to reach out to them, and maybe we can get something done. Even that 68 will be better than what
Yeah,
they
like
are
an
now, so.
algorithm. This is where you start, and this, and back over here, and then
Yeah.
city council to give their insights, and then go back, and that just come to city council and be unhappy or something, you know, like that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jeff.
Rachel again from G3. I just have actually a question to the group and maybe to the online. So I know as individuals you are communicating, and this is a conversation of, hey, individually we can communicate. If there are anyone who works in like organizing, or is there a group locally? I know where Oakland County's at, but if there's a organizing community organization that's taking this on, like that would be cool to get together. And if not, I'm not an organizer, but I'd be down to organize with people in here. So I'm just putting that out there to that world, or that world, wherever it is, where the camera is, here, like, that seems like it would benefit a lot of us materially in our everyday, and not have us have to give away and make these stark decisions of like, oh, we have to go this route, and we throw away everything else for the well-being of our city, or we can only have this or that. So feels like individually, we probably won't make an impact, but the more we can be a community, maybe we can. So let's get on that. I'd be down, and I'll stay after if someone else is down. It's not my avenue, but I'm down to do something different than this, although this is helpful. But
Hello, Tina Tarachi. I'm on 3195 Chester Street. I'm on the east side of the tracks, by the way. I voted no, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm a homeowner. My house is paid off. Okay, so all I do is now I can see what the taxes are. So in my mind, you know, when it was just rolled into my mortgage, it didn't matter. I always voted yes, and I always voted yes. I moved to Ferndale over Royal Oak because I love Ferndale. But when I just started to see my tax bill, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, how much? And I can afford the increase because I did buy my home 30 years ago. But I will say, to protect myself, I voted no because I thought if we say yes now, what's going to happen? You know, I'm retired, I have a pension. What's going to happen after 3 years? What's going to happen after 5? Am I going to be able to still live here? So what I did is I'm like, I'm going to vote no. And I will tell you, Precinct 7, I did hand out flyers. I handed out flyers from 8 Mile to 9 Mile, from Wanda to West End, every single house, and to vote no. And I really believe that we needed to protect, we need to protect our money as citizens. We want what Ferndale has to offer. I love the police, I love the fire, I love our city services. But I think if we look at it more critically and come up with something that doesn't seem so high, more people are going to say, yeah, we can afford, maybe not 4.3, but maybe we can afford 2.8 more. And regarding the police, I am retired from a Teamster corporation. And with the 5 contracts that expire, what would happen if we don't get any type of agreement on, do they go on strike? Do they get, what happens if we don't have money to pay their contract?
Well, I can tell you that in Michigan, public safety unions cannot strike. And so what happens if a collective bargaining agreement expires and we have not yet negotiated a final agreement? It's usually handled through, it could be a memorandum of understanding for a temporary and interim agreement. Sometimes you can agree to continue to abide by the terms of the expired agreement for a period of time until the new agreement is negotiated. But generally, public safety unions cannot strike.
And not to repeat the online question, but I really didn't know what we would lose voting no. I didn't know what we would gain by voting yes. I just knew I had to protect what I was paying as a homeowner, property tax. So that's why I voted no. So maybe if we can kind of break it down and make it a little bit more understandable, I think you're going to get a yes on this.
Through the chair, just to add on to Councilmember Johnson's comments, while they can't strike, it doesn't restrict them from leaving a department, employees leaving and going to another police department. And then you have a situation where you have all of these empty seats in the police and fire station, and who wants to be hired into that situation?
Through the chair, what would you support if we came back with a ballot initiative?
I would support, wait, what was it? 8.6 with the 2 combined? Mm-hmm. I would support like half of that. You know, I would support like maybe at the max 5 with both of them combined. But 8.6, God, that's a lot of money. And for when I talk to my neighbors and I find out what they pay for their taxes, and they're young with kids, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're paying how much a year? And I don't think we're going to get new residents. So we have to make it a little bit more without, I know everybody wants the world, but I think 5 is fair. It's fair. It's a little bit more than half. And I think we wouldn't, cut our nose off to spite our face, right? And, I would support a yes if there were some good changes. And I will peddle stuff to door. I mean, did it once, I'm a retired UPSer, so I'm used to delivering to houses and it's stuff like that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. You guys mind if I read something? I should have done it in the beginning, but it'll save some time. She just gave you your answer. That's what you're looking for right there. That's the one that's going to win. So let me express, I'm here for pragmatic reasons and to help you out here. So let me read this and it'll be brief. Good evening, Ferndale. My name is Mike Thompson. I live at 1415 West Troy Street. Jeff Kroon's old house. Jeff, how you doing? Yeah, he used to live in my house. Anyways, I'm speaking for myself tonight, but it is likely what I am about to say reflects the concerns of many no voters in Ferndale. Over the past few months, I have learned a great deal about the no voter in Ferndale. Something I will come right out and say is many voters will vote no on any proposal, regardless how minimal the tax increase. More than a few would like to see this reset to 11 mills. That has been conveyed to me more than once. I would also say the no voter is highly motivated to vote no again. There is a strong desire to right some errors from the past. Despite your best efforts, you are paying the price for things that did not occur on your watch. The last proposal you folks put forth did not help your standing among many in the no community. Please understand that this is only part of the resistance. Economic uncertainty is dominating many households right now, likely more now than on November 5th. I am here in good faith to offer you all some advice and an opportunity at victory on your next proposal. Despite what you might be hearing from your people in the community, any proposal will face headwinds. Every dollar you add above and beyond what is needed will add a multiplier of risk the next proposal fails. At some point, the employees, police officers, firefighters, and DPW workers are going to start asking if you actually do care about them and their families. With all that being said, I am willing to get clobbered by the hard no community to help you sell a reasonable proposal and bring some of the moderates to a yes. As I have said in the past, what is required for my participation is to end the era of using police and fire in political negotiations, to offer hope to new home buyers that the city sees the outside burden of taxes you pay and start doing something about it, and offer confidence that this can become your forever home. Finally, we must limit risk to the taxpayer. In conclusion, you can spend all the time you want on trying to listen to what folks liked and didn't like about the last proposal, but the reality is limiting risk should be your primary objective, unless you are willing to try this again next November. But 11 mills capped at a 5% increase sounds very appealing to many at this point in time, perhaps even more next November. That, folks, I believe is the ballgame. Thank you.
Crunched those numbers before we had this vote. 11 mills is with an expiration, and we know that's 4.2 million out of the city's budget.
We asked to hear, and we're hearing.
I know, I'm just pointing out.
Any other questions from, or discussion from council regarding this?
I just wanted to say I appreciate you arranging this. I appreciate all of us being here to listen to our residents, listen to their concerns, listen to their ideas, so that we can find something workable to move forward.
Any other questions from the audience? Any comments? Any suggestions at all? Someone who didn't get a chance to speak. Oh, we've got people online? Okay, let's go with them.
Couple, I swear, and then I'm done.
Right.
Just three. Okay, first one, Eastside resident since January 2021. I support recreation. I think quality of life things are an investment in our kids and families and property values and more than just a luxury, but it would be easier to vote for a proposal with a smaller increase and an end date and just to focus on police and fire for now. Another one is I voted no because I wanted to keep public services but did not want more money going toward police. And the last one is it possible to send out feedback, is it possible to send out a feedback link to the community to gauge how we can craft this with a quick turnaround? I know there's people out there that would love to give feedback. And as your comm specialist, I can help with that if you need it.
It's Riley.
Okay.
I just want to thank you all for being here tonight. Appreciate it and giving us some things to chew on and think about, and hopefully we can find some common forward.
This will probably seem a little scatterbrained, I apologize. So I moved here about 10 years ago from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and services don't exist. Police and fire they do their best. So moving here, it was pretty mind-blowing that somebody was picking up my leaves and mulching my yard waste. Like, whoa. But I know my budget, and I voted no in accordance with my budget. And police and fire are extremely important to me. As a community member, as a mother, that's just, we need that, right? So it seems to me, exactly what Mike said, the answer is somewhere very pragmatic. And cutting services, it sucks. We're all going to be pissed. You know, people are going to moan and groan, but we need police, we need fire, we need to be able to live within our budgets. So is there something in the middle where, can we make it a la carte? If you want to have your leaves mulched, this is how much it costs, and you pay for it. If you want to have large curb pickup, this is how much it costs. Until we can get back to a point where that is something that is included in what we pay for our taxes. And that sucks. We're not going to draw new people into the community, but we kind of have to figure this out before we can give them this inclusive picture of what it is our taxes pay for. So, you know, I guess we just kind of have to be mad for a minute and deal with the problem and then move forward and then start adding back in the things that blew my mind when I moved here 10 years ago. Yeah, and I have more, but another time. Thanks.
A point of reference, we pay separately on our tax bill for DPW waste services. We pay separate for that.
All right. Well, unless there's anything else? Yes, Steve.
Skipped actually the approval of the agenda motion.
Did we? Wait, what?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Okay. Well, hey, we wanted to get right into it, I guess. All right.
Who was
Roll call.
support?
Support was?
It was Laura.
Laura. Okay. Okay.
Polka?
Yes.
Mikulski?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Kelly? Yes. Leaks May?
Yes. And I just want to thank you all for joining tonight and providing your input. We had, I'm sure all of us took notes. Our clerk, our assistant clerk here was taking notes, and we have something to go on, but, you know, we're still moving forward as far as learning what we can learn before we put something on the agenda, on the ballot, and when that will be. If we do something for the May ballot, that will have to be finalized, I believe, at our January 27th meeting? Yes. Okay, so time is of the essence, so we will get to work as far as learning what you need and also having another town hall for those who couldn't attend tonight. So with that being said, this meeting, unless there's anyone else, come so we can hear you.
You have to go up to the microphone so the audience at home. No, the audience at home.
Is regarding the fire and the police, and this might be something, I'm telling you what I think you should do to get it passed, is one of the things is you've put out any information. Many years ago, my son was very ill, and every time you turned around, in fact, he had passed away, I had to call the fire department. And the fire department who came out, not EMS at all times. And I asked him, I says, how many times you guys come, during the year? And it was well over 1,000. So that's telling you right there, as far as your fire department goes, you really need them. And that would be something you could possibly put in on a flyer. Hey, these guys and so on and so forth, find out how many times they came last year. Must be more than was, I would say, about 8 years ago. So there's something that you need to kind of put out there. Let them know if you want that, like I said, as far as passing, as far as public safety goes. Fire department, that's all I have to say. Good night, folks.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay.
Can I skip my introduction since I'm...
Go ahead.
I would like to say that I do agree with the earlier speaker concerning that if there is like some sort of happy middle ground, because I do understand the issue that on one hand there is a concern that this would raise the taxes, and this is something that I don't really worry about. I rent, but at some point, yeah, I would like to own a home, and if a high tax value is something that I'm going to have to be looking forward to, then I probably would vote no. On the other hand, I also understand the actual need for actual like recreational services, and I do see why having additional facilities built, even when we have something that's pre-existing, would seem a bit, for the lack of a better word, what comes to mind is frivolous. But to decline any form of actual like recreation just because someone's not actively in that area, that kind of seems a bit unfair. And as far as police and fire goes, like, yeah, they need to have the appropriate budget for their facilities. So, like, actually having functioning facilities, I do get that. So, sorry, I'm
it's okay.
Kind of still processing a whole lot. So, and just again, hopefully something is found out, like, especially if it's going to be, because, like, regardless, I kind of think that, like, even if funds are going towards either Parks and Rec and police, there's still going to be that matter of whether or not there is going to be a tax hike. So maybe actually figure out what exactly the money is going to be going into both, and just figure out like what's actually going to be necessary for what. That's everything that's basically everything that's coming to mind, and I can actually articulate. So
Before you leave, can you state your name and
your address so that, because we didn't do that at the beginning.
Right, sorry, just trying.
That's okay.
Find time. I'm Kevin Roach, ROACH. That's how it's spelled. Street is West Marshall.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Kevin.
Welcome for your time.
Okay. All right. Any more online? We're good? Okay. All right. Then with that being said, this town hall / council meeting will adjourn at 8:32. Thank you for being here.